First of all, I would like to welcome you to Istanbul and thank you for participating at the IST Istanbul Arts and Culture Festival. Because I know you had a very busy schedule. Your film, Youth, directed by Paolo Sorrentino, has been shown this week in Cannes, which was very well received by the audiences and critics. And was that also the first time you saw that film?
First, let me say thank you for having me here. I'm glad to be here. Second of all, I'm not that busy where it would bother me. To do nothing would be busier and more terrible. So.
Was that the first time? Was it also the first time you saw that film in Cannes?
Yes.
And what was your reaction?
Well, first of all, you can't expect me to say nice things about myself. Paolo Sorrentino. I say there are two Tinos in my life. One is Sorrentino, the other is Tarantino. So I get mixed up. But Paolo Sorrentino is an incredible talent.
Yeah, of course.
Some of you must have seen his films, Il Divo and Great Beauty. So it was a pleasure to work with him.
So going back, you grew up in Brooklyn, New York City, and people from Brooklyn in the crowd. I mean, what was it like to grow up in Brooklyn, etc.? Can you tell us a little bit about the time, about the period in your life?
A little bit about growing up in Brooklyn. Well, I managed never to get arrested. One thing. I stole some pigeons in my life.
Was it a common thing in Brooklyn?
It was difficult to get away with it. So if somebody caught you, you would get a beating for sure. Brooklyn was a great place to grow up in. I grew up in Coney Island section of Brooklyn. And it was a mixture of every culture you could think of. Coney Island, Brighton Beach, and that area. Right by the sea. Not that I was a part of that. It sounds like a vacation spot, but I grew up on top of a store. We shared a bathroom, we shared a kitchen with people. But it was a hard-working community. I'd say not quite middle class. And it was a good upbringing. I had great friends. I had great friends in Brooklyn, and I always feel that the friends I had in my life saved me from the suicide of childhood.
And are you still in touch with them?
Yes.
And in one of your interviews, you mentioned that you were saved by the Marines. What made you join the Marines, and what happened there that affected you so deeply?
How much time do we have here? We have time. These questions are all very good, but it takes having a couple of drinks, I think, over them. Well, excuse me. I've been talking for days in Cannes, and my voice is gone. Well, I said that the Marines saved my life, and in a sense it did. It was the first place, I believe, I ever met mythology. I became a reader of mythology later on in life. And when I look back, I realized that when I was 17 in the Marines, there was a moment where we were all out in the darkness. We were all out in the darkness practicing maneuvers. It was a night combat training course. And all I know is I was very scared. And we had finished basic training on Paris Island, so we were Marines now, but I was still scared. And you couldn't see your hand in front of your face, but there were hundreds of us out there to learn about night combat. And I was hoping no one else knew I was scared. And I thought I'm not supposed to be scared, but I was. And all of a sudden, a voice boomed out, and we looked around. You couldn't see anybody, but there was the moon, and there was some light from the moon. There was a silhouette further back than that wall is, of someone standing on a platform, stage, who said out loud over a microphone, "You're all afraid of the darkness." And I froze, thinking, how the hell does he know I was afraid? And he said, "We're all afraid of what we don't know. And you don't know the darkness. But we're going to teach you to live in it." And I think that was the first mythological experience I ever had. And in that sense, saved my life by making me aware that fear could be your friend. Because fear does exist, and you must make it your friend. There's energy in fear. And to be fearless, you must know fear. So in that sense, saved my life.
Do you have fear when you act?
I have fear when I cross the street. How else do you get across? Yes, but it's not the same
Kind of fear.
Fear is fear, but when you acknowledge it, when you've lived with it, acknowledged it, become aware of it, becomes something other. And you learn you can function with fear. I remember the heavyweight champion of the world, former heavyweight champion of the world, what's his name, the wonderful boxer.
Lennox Lewis.
After. Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson said in an interview he did, he does not step into the ring unless he's afraid. That shows you how you can handle your fear.
By facing
It becomes a source of power.
driving force.
I believe it enables you to access your own power, become aware of it.
You can handle it.
Yes, because fear institutes mechanisms within that start pumping and doing all kinds of things to your body, gives you strength. Yeah.
And after the Marines, when did you first decide you wanted to be in the movies? Or when did you first decide you wanted to be an actor?
That's more accurate, because you can't decide to be in the movies. But if it decides you, if you're lucky enough. It was about 3 years afterwards. I was wandering around, working. I sold shoes for a little while, women's shoes. And I became famous in the store because I actually almost sold a girl a pair of shoes on the wrong foot. I had them on the wrong foot. And the owner corrected me. He saw it happening and he said, on the wrong foot. I switched them over. She bought them. I remember something funny though, that the owner of the store, because I was a young man at the time, and he knew I had been in the Marines, and he chose me, because the store had a lot of old men working at the time. He chose me when he collected the money from the day's business to walk with him to the bank, so I would protect his money. And so I did it because I needed the job. But I thought to myself, he must be a fool to think I'm going to protect him. Someone's trying to steal his money. Well, get it?
And that's when you decided to become an actor?
The Marines are brave, not stupid.
And then in 1965, you made your first stage debut in a Sam Shepard play. And afterwards, your first starring role, your first role in a motion picture film was in a movie called Who's Knocking at My Door? which was also the first time filmmaker Martin Scorsese. How did you meet Martin Scorsese?
Well, I was looking to get experience as an actor, and we would follow the trade papers, because they had auditions listed, what was available. There wasn't much available to me because I wasn't in the union, I wasn't equity or SAG or anything. So I was just looking to get experience. I was still working, I had to make money. And I met Marty from one of those ads, a student film, a student at New York University was making, and that was Marty. And this was a non-union film. It was a non-union, nobody had agency. There were a couple of hundred people there, which scared me a little bit. Oh my gosh, this many people are unemployed. I wish I had a job. I was selling shoes. And I got the part.
Did you audition for the part?
Yes, I auditioned.
How many times?
Three.
3 times.
3 times. We shot it on weekends over Marty's term in school. We shot on weekends. We didn't get paid.
Didn't get paid. And also it was a very special time in America, the 60s and the early 70s.
Excuse me, can I cut for a second? I don't know if there are a lot of filmmakers here, or actors, or writers. Are there? No? Okay. Not very many. Then the story might not be so funny. It involved Marty Scorsese, but... Well, let me tell it anyway.
Okay.
So at the last audition for Who's That Knocking at My Door, which was Marty's student film at New York University, the last audition came down to 3 people, me and somebody else. So it was nighttime, we were at NYU, and so Marty says to me, Harvey, go down the hall, and most of the lights were out, there were night lights on. And he said, and there's a door down there on the left that is open. He said, go into that door. What the hell is going on here? So I walk down the hallway, walk into the room, and there's somebody sitting there, and there's like one light on. The whole room is dark, but there's one light on. And this guy says to me, in sort of a nasty voice, sit down. I said, who are you? He said, it doesn't matter who I am, sit down. I said, fuck you. And he said, he got up and he cursed me, and we started to go toward each other, and all of a sudden a voice booms out from the back of this darkness, says, no, Harvey, no, stop. I turned around, it's Marty. I said, what's going on here? He said, this is an improvisation. What 4 years of school did for Marty. I said, Marty, if you're doing an improvisation, you have to tell the actor. So anyway, we all became friends. I got the part.
And did you do a lot of improvisation in your work with Marty?
Yeah.
At the time, the 60s and 70s was a very special time in American film and in American culture. And it can also be called like the American Renaissance in film. And the social climate of that era, I think, had a huge effect on the films as well. There was the civil rights movement, the Watergate scandal, the war in Vietnam, and the Timothy Leary hippie culture that was going on. Can you tell us a bit how this affected you as a person and as an actor? Did you feel that change in American films, that you were part of something different than that was going on before?
It was certainly an invigorating time, all the events you described. And, well, let me begin somewhere. I don't have any speeches to make, just some experiences I can share. I wasn't out of the Marines that long. And I remember sitting around with my comrades from acting class, and Vietnam was going on, early Vietnam. And my classmates were all for ending the war. And I was for the war. I said, oh, come on, blah, 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 blah. And they all said to me, Harvey, what's the matter with you? How can you be for this war? And anyway, these wonderful actresses and actors I studied with, over time made me aware of my ignorance. And one of them gave me a book called The Arrogance of Power by Eugene McCarthy, I think the author's name was, that turned me around about the Vietnam War. And I became a demonstrator against the war. So that was one of the pivotal movements within myself of those times. And then there was Woodstock. I'm jumping around here somewhere. And that was another time that was unbelievable. You know, that entire movement. And what I watched also a handful of people demonstrating against the war in Vietnam early on. There was just a handful of people on a corner. You would see them holding up a placard, you know. And I watched that grow to the huge movement that you've all seen in documentaries, movies, I'm sure. And I was so taken by the courage of those early demonstrators against the war, the courage they had to demonstrate against it, get beaten up and shoved around by those who were for the war, like myself. Although I never shoved anyone around. It didn't need shoving. And I always admired those people for their taking a stand for exercising their civil right to disobey. They changed America's point of view about the war in Vietnam. And I saw that happen. That was one of the most exciting events for me of those 60s and 70s.
And which also had I guess, a huge impact on the film industry and the way people started to express themselves in the movies.
Yeah, because we like we all know, we feel something's wrong. There's war going on now, and the outlook for it is poor. Nothing will get resolved in the war. People who made a difference were those handful of people standing on the street corners. You know.
And there was a very creative freedom as well.
That was part of that. That was part of that vigil on the street corner. It grew and grew and
So
grew.
it came from the street.
Came from the street. Came from the street.
And this freedom in American film gave you and Scorsese in 1973 the chance to make the film Mean Street, which is, I think, one of the...
I'm sorry. Gave us a chance before that to make a film while Marty Scorsese was teaching at NYU. And there was a march on Washington after the Kent State, what we call the Kent State massacre, where some students were shot by our National Guard protesting the war in Vietnam. And Marty collected students at NYU, film students. We went down there, we took over the school. They took over the school, I joined them, and we all drove down to Washington to join a huge demonstration of university students from across the country. And out of that, Marty had students making their own films, little films on the streets of what was going on. And other students from other universities across the land were making theirs. And Marty collected, I'm making a long story short as I can, Marty collected these films and made a film called Street Scenes 1970.
Was it ever released?
Yes. It played in the New York Film Festival in 1971. I mean, we were astonished, you know. We were in the Lincoln Center New York Film Festival, 1971. And then that film was disseminated around universities in the country.
And it was
Show what was
shown at the
going on.
campuses? It was screened at the campuses all over the
Yes,
country?
yes. Well, Street Scenes, 1970. If you can ever get your hands on it, I recommend that you see it. I don't have a copy.
Getting back to Mean
I'm
Streets.
sure Marty has a copy. So all of you contact him. I'm sure he'll love that. Get me a copy when you do.
So getting back to Mean Streets, is it true that Scorsese wrote the part of Charlie with you in mind?
Oh, boy. Yes.
I mean, it's a very.
So he said.
I mean, it's a very realistic portrayal of Italian-American gangsters in film, which was rarely seen in American film.
Listen to me, I'm sorry. I can't let this go by without telling you more of a truth about this story. Okay? I don't think I've said this before, but let me go ahead and say it now. Yes, Marty, because we had done Who's That Knocking at My Door when he was a student, and like 5 years later he wrote this with me in mind. But there came a time where he offered the part to John Boyd and said, I won't be doing it. And John Boyd told Marty, you're better off not having him, because he would take away from the movie, because John was, first of all, he's one of the best actors ever.
That was after Midnight Cowboy?
I don't know if that was after that or before it, but John was known, he was very well known, maybe he was after that, I'm not sure. But John Boyd is a great actor, and he was known as one. And John asked Marty, advised Marty not to cast him in it, because he felt he would take away from the story itself. So, so Marty gave me back the part.
Thank God he did.
And then he took it away again. There was another actor he gave the part to, but that, lucky for me, that actor got a part in a Broadway play. Now, he had a choice of a Broadway play to do as against this unknown Marty Scorsese from, that was just nothing compared to the great writer that wrote this play, Arthur Miller. So of course he took the part on Broadway, any actor would have. So the part came back to me again.
For the final time?
Yeah, because there was no one else for Marty to offer it to, so I got the part.
I mean, as I said, the film is magnificent. It's in a few aspects. One of that really has a huge impact on me is that it has such a realistic portrayal of Italian-American gangsters in film. Because until that time, there was no film like that, maybe Godfather, that it was not portrayed in this realistic way. I mean, how did you create or prepare for this part? It's a very realistic, honest performance.
Well, first let me say, a lot of this is long stories that probably talking about one aspect of it would take all the time we have, so I'm jumping around a bit, so bear with me. First of all, it's about a culture in New York, Little Italy. Because in the movie, really, we are not all gangsters. The character I played, Charlie, this is the way film goes sometimes. There was a scene where Charlie is a student at NYU, the very school that Marty went to. So I was playing a graduate student who lived in Little Italy, which many Italian Americans do, who was friendly with Johnny Boy, played by Robert De Niro, and had an uncle that was connected to the mob. That was the culture of Little Italy, yes. And Marty chose to cut out from the movie, of course, the scene where I'm asking my girlfriend to help me with my dissertation at the end of the term. So people are left with the impression that I'm a gangster in the movie. But Charlie was not really a gangster. He was a young man fearful of life and things and of God. And you saw the scenes in the church and all that. Johnny Boy was someone who was not a gangster either, although he was associated, tried to be one, wanted to be one, and he walked in their steps, you might say. But he was no made man. The uncle was. Those were the made men. So there were different stratas of Italian Americans portrayed in it.
Since this year's festival theme is realism in arts and culture, as an actor, how would you define a realistic performance, motion picture?
Very simply this way. There's an award given in Russia, in Moscow, at the film festival. It's called the Stanislavski Award. You know who Stanislavski was? The great Russian teacher, actor, director, producer. The method is based on him. And on the award is written one line, which Stanislavski was fond of saying when he was training actors. I believe you. Or I don't believe you. So you wanted to reach holding that statue in your hand, which said, I believe you.
Is that a difficult path?
Yeah. Yeah, a difficult one, but a worthwhile one. I mean, to go, we spent our lives in the theater, in class, which were some of the great days of my life when we had no money and we were suffering to make a buck, you know, to pay the rent and all that. But what we had was this desire to become actors in the tradition of Kazan and Brando and Dean and those great people. I'm trying to think of a woman's name now, but okay, Anna Magnani and others. And our search always was to struggle, find one moment of truth to bring into the character that you were portraying. In this case, in the acting class. And that was the goal, that was the desire. And the method was our way in. Our technique was the method. That was a way to approach getting into the reality of character through yourself, your own reality, different shapes and forms. Like you would mold clay.
And how much of Harvey Keitel is in the roles that you create in?
Everything. I try anyway.
But everything, it's all you, your emotions, and you just that character or character adapts to you.
I adapt to it, but I find it within myself.
So the answer is always in self.
Like this, you know.
Is there sometimes a
Then you
blocking?
pray.
Is there sometimes a blocking by getting that out of you into transfer it to a performance?
That's the
Or
struggle.
a limitation? Or a...
Well, that's the struggle to become aware of yourself, to increase your awareness is a struggle. And then depending on your own psychological state of mind, you will achieve awareness in that struggle somewhere. Not all of us are the same, and it takes shorter time, longer time. The talent itself is something else. Yeah, you could almost, in a way, I could almost in a way say, forget the talent. It's getting to your own talent. That's the point. And you don't have to match it to anybody else's talent. What you have to be is the most you can be, most aware you can be of you. Then you'll do your best. You'll do your all.
And with hard work as well, right?
I don't know of anything achieved without work, hard work.
Your artistic collaboration
I'm
with...
sorry. I don't want to leave it at hard work, but it's a struggle. It's more a struggle. Hard work could be meaning, you know,
Something not fun,
like
something there's no enjoyment, but it's a struggle, which is very enjoying.
like hard labor. But in this case, it's a labor of love, a labor of desire, because you feel something is growing. Like those people on the street who are protesting the war. And we observed them first as a handful of people. And something they said or did, behaved, touched something within us. And something started to grow in me and my neighbor and on and on and on till there were hundreds of thousands of millions of Americans. That something grew in that was wrong here. So creating a role is not dissimilar to that, really. You get little hints, apply your technique to this character that somebody wrote, and then you give it what your imagination gives you to give it.
And your artistic collaboration with Scorsese continued in one of the most influential films in American history, which is called Taxi Driver. And according to my research, you had a very active role in creating the character Sport. How did you prepare for this role, for this part?
The first thing was, I was doing a play on Broadway at the time that we did the movie. I shot my role in the movie all night long. After the play was over, he'd pick me up in the car and we'd go downtown, and I'd shoot all night long until the sun came up. But, the role I played was the pimp. Well, I didn't know anything about being a pimp or how to be a pimp. And, but in front of the theater I was working in on Broadway, there were a lot of women of the night around that area. And so one day on my way to performance, the show was at 8 o'clock, and there was one of the girls standing in the doorway near the theater. And I went up to her and I said, "Excuse me, may I talk to you?" She just looked at me, she didn't say a word. That is yes. So I started to talk, and I tried to describe to her, I'm doing this movie with this unknown director, that I'm playing a pimp in it. And I said, but there, I'm this fellow over there, because the sign for the play was right down there. I said, that's me, my name there. I wanted her to know that I was not a cop. And I said, that's me. And I said, I'm looking for help, playing this part, blah, 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 blah. And she doesn't say a word. I'm just talking. Finally, I had nothing else to say. But she didn't say a word. I said, would you help me? She was staring at me all this time. And finally, she did say something. And that was this: no one's going to talk to you. I sulked away. I'll never forget that girl. And then I did meet someone through somebody else. A pimp. Well, he claimed to be a former pimp, but who knows? And we worked together for 2 weeks, actually. I got a room at the Actors Studio. I took him there, and we improvised. He played the pimp, and I played the girl. And then eventually, and he taught me laughing. And he showed me how he would treat the girl, and then we switched roles, and I would play him, and he'd play the girl. And that went on for 2 weeks' time. The thing that was very difficult for me to, that's how that role was created. It was, and that was the scene where I was dancing with Jodie Foster. That was not in the movie at the time. It was not in the script. Then Marty decided to put that dancing scene with Jodie Foster in the movie. Because the fellow had told me, you love the girl. I said, yeah. He said, no. He said, you love the girl. I said, I heard you. He said, I don't think you're getting it. He said, when you tell the girl you're going to do something, you do it. You say you're gonna take her away on vacation or something, you take her away. You say it's her birthday, you're gonna buy her a gift, you buy the gift. And I saw that I was not getting something, that he was trying to teach me about his way of being a pimp. It wasn't an old-time pimp where you hear they force girls around and push them around. So he was sort of a new wave pimp, you might say. And to this day, I always wonder about that. But he said, I mean what I'm saying. So I treated Jody that way, and that's how we came up with that dance.
And the long hair and the long fingernails, is that something you adapted from that character?
Not from him, but from other people. I saw the scene nowadays about doing coke and all that, you know. What can I use for this character and all that? And so she told me one thing was they have a long fingernail to do the coke with. That's what.
Your last collaboration with Scorsese was on an extremely difficult, controversial film based on the novel by Nikos Kazantzakis called Last Temptation of Christ. What was your reaction when Scorsese offered you the part of Judas?
If I could go back a second, actually, to Taxi Driver.
Driver.
I was not offered the role of the pimp. Marty had wanted me to play the campaign worker. But I had spent all those years living amongst the pimps and the girls in Hell's Kitchen. And I asked Marty to let me play the part of the pimp. But he said, oh, it's only 5 lines. There were only 5 lines.
So very minor.
7 lines, yeah. I said, let me play the pimp. So he let me, but he said, okay. So we improvised those scenes. Okay, now, I'm sorry, your question was about...
Going from the pimp to Judas. That's a weird transition, my mistake, but as I said, it was one of the most difficult and controversial films. And the book is also very hard to...
Well, for me, that book was a story that changed my life. And the way things can change your life when you come across them. Like the moment when that man said, you're all afraid of the darkness. The Last Temptation of Christ is a great book. I don't know what to say about it.
And Kazantzakis' version is how he perceived the Bible.
Yeah, well, I always wondered about that when I was a boy growing up in Brooklyn. I had read the Bible when I was a little boy, and I didn't understand the story of Judas. It didn't make sense to me, but I never said anything to anybody about it because on the street, Judas was this fellow who betrayed Jesus. He was a bad guy, you know. You're Judas.
But in the film, they're portrayed as loyal friends.
Well, it didn't make sense to me. I always thought, how did he do that for a couple of pieces of silver or gold or whatever it was? When he was the son of a rabbi. I think he was the son of a rabbi, and he came from a wealthy family. It just didn't make sense. But all those years growing up, really all those years, I never said anything. I was afraid to be on the wrong side of right. And then I read Kazantzakis' book. He writes this amazing story about loyalty Judas had for Jesus, and he didn't need the money. It was a question of fulfilling a prophecy so that Jesus would become the Messiah. It was this collusion between them to help Jesus to get to the cross. It's quite a story. I suggest you read that novel if you have not, because Kazantzakis said it much better than I am now.
And it's basically a journey of 2 friends to the cross.
Yeah.
Is that how it was perceived, transferred to the screen?
Yes.
Between
That's
Willem
how it
Dafoe, Scorsese, and you?
It was perceived the way Kazantzakis wrote it, yes. And needless to say, there was a lot of demonstrations against it. I mean, some theaters were set on fire. I think in France there was one. And there were smoke bombs thrown in others. And When the movie opened, there was a march around the street by protesters against the movie. But a word of wisdom came from all that. Do you know the film director, the Italian film director, Eseli? Yeah? Okay, well, for those of you who do, you do. Those of you who don't, you'll hear this. Eseli is a great Italian filmmaker. He's an older man now. And when the protests were going on, the church had banned The Last Temptation of Christ. They banned it. If you're Catholic, you must not see it or you'll go to hell. And I called Eseli. He was in Venice at the film festival at the time, because we were going to Venice or something like that. So I called him, and there were these huge protests going on in Italy, in the newspapers also. Christians are banned from seeing The Last Temptation of Christ. The priests were declaring it against religion to go and see The Last Temptation of Christ. So Eseli gets on the phone, and he says, Harvey, I see all the protests by the priests that say do not see the movie. They have not one of them have ever seen the movie. And they say don't see it. So I gave an interview, he said, to the newspapers. I said, I have not seen the movie either. And I say, go and see it. So, there you have art and religion clashing.
Was there a time that you felt uncomfortable while doing this?
Never. I felt great from the moment I read Kazantzakis' insightful, imaginative heart in The Last Temptation of Christ.
It's a wonderful. Last year, at this very same stage, we had the great American filmmaker Abel Ferrara. And he spoke very highly of you and your work in Bad Lieutenant. What was your reaction when you first read the script?
Oh. Are you all sticking around for this? Which part of the story do you want? Well,
The uncensored version.
I'll try to go through it quickly. I was looking for a lead in the movie. I was getting a lot of supporting roles, and I was just sick of being a supporting actor. You know, I just wanted to take over everything. And so my attorney at the time sends me the script that this fellow, whom I never met, Abel Ferrara, was doing a movie. So he sends over the script. I'm in a hotel by myself in Los Angeles. At the time, I was working on something or other, a supporting role. And the script comes, and it's like that thin. What is this? I open it up. The letters on the page are like that large. I've never seen a script like that in my life. So I start reading it. I read maybe, I don't know, 7 pages. It was only about 17 pages long. I took it, I said, right in the garbage can. I threw it in the garbage can right by my side. I said, I can't say here now. I can't get a break. I said, maybe I better look at it and finish it, because at least it's a lead in something. So I reached in the garbage, and I took it back out. And I kept reading, and I came to the part of the nun. The part of the nun was written by this beautiful woman, young lady, whose name is Zoe. You know her last name? Well, she
wrote the whole screenplay.
She wrote the part of the nun. That was written out. The other part of the lieutenant was just shabby. She unfortunately overdosed on heroin. Woman died. She wrote the part of the nun, and it was written so beautifully. I was astonished by it. And it was because of the nun that took the part. So when I read the part of the nun, I understood who the lieutenant should be. Then we improvised a lot of the script.
It's really hard to believe that that film was also written by a woman scriptwriter.
Well, she and Abel collaborated on it, but there was not much writing in it until you came to the nun in the script. And the reason why he wrote those big letters was because he was trying to get money for the movie, and he needed more pages in the script. Can you believe it? It's true. I said, you gotta be kidding me.
And I had the chance to discuss the film in great detail with Abel, and I was asking him about certain scenes, how it was shot, and how it was, and he would always give me the same answer. He would say, "Oh, that was just Harvey. That was just he would just go out there and do it, and he would nail it." And I get the sense that this was like almost like a perfect collaboration between a filmmaker and an actor, or even more accurately, between two artists collaborating. I mean, as an actor, how would you define a perfect filmmaker and actor relationship?
Well, that would be one of them, like the way you described it just now. When two people are in harmony about something, you understand it so well, both know what you're after. You don't know how you're going to arrive there yet. You haven't done it yet. But you know where you want to go. You know you want to date with that person. And where you go almost doesn't matter. What matters is that you're together. You're going someplace.
Like as partners. As partners.
Right, as partners in the journey. You're going to go to this place no matter what it takes to get there.
In harmony. Well, according to me, you have an amazing gift in choosing work with very talented first-time filmmakers. And I think this is very evident in this next film, which was called Reservoir Dogs, directed by first-time filmmaker then Quentin Tarantino. What attracted you as an actor to this project?
First of all, a woman gave me that script. A colleague of mine from the Actors Studio, she called one day and said, "I have a script I think you're going to like." And she sends over Reservoir Dogs. And that was it. I read it.
And you also produced the film.
I was a co-producer on it, yes. Which means they couldn't get the money without me.
So the film would have never been made if you wouldn't have been the co-producer.
At that time, it would not have been made without me, no. You want to believe eventually it would have been made, but some great things, and like Van Gogh never selling a painting, can't count on those things being done just because there's an artist at work. Sometimes you don't have the luck necessary. So this woman gave me the script, and took me about a week or two to really adjust to it, because I just felt a certain movement in my body about like
About the violence? About the violence? Was it a graphic violence that's shown in the film? Was
no,
it on the
no,
screen?
it wasn't the violence. I didn't consider it. Well, I considered it violent, but in an emotional way. Violent in a spiritual way. Violent from being shaped, and not knowing how to mold a better shape so you can walk better, smell the flowers. It was a misshapen person, misshapen way of life.
And it's an amazing ensemble piece, one of my favorite ensemble performances in the film. And as an actor, if you compare for, let's say, like a movie like Bad Lieutenant, where the whole plot weight is on one character, and that character carries you throughout the whole story. And rather than in Reservoir Dogs, it's a brilliant ensemble piece. How can you tell the difference as an actor on working on an ensemble piece and just working on a film that the lead character is in every scene?
Well, I learned from being a supporting character that the lead actor is bigger. And the ensemble piece, they're it's an ensemble piece, you know. But when you're playing an ensemble piece like Reservoir Dogs, the writing is so great, so wonderful. There are no small parts. every part is like a lead. The Bad Lieutenant, were lesser parts. But you're always looking to do your best. At least my training has been that way. Most of the actors I know. Take a part and you, Still Adler, a great acting teacher in America, used to have a phrase. She said, if you take the part, you make a choice, and you do it like Hercules. And I always kept that in mind. If you're going to accept the part, then you give it your best, no matter what the part is, no matter what size it is.
Once you sign up, you have to do the best.
You're committed to do your best as an actor. You know, no complaints. If you're accepting the part, you do your best.
Signed with blood.
Signed with blood.
And I mean, Reservoir Dogs was one of the most important independent films of the 90s. And you have a tremendous...
Sorry, let me drop. I want to also add this. A woman produced both those movies, Reservoir Dogs and The Bad Lieutenant. Little petite gal, her name was Ronna Wallace, and nobody wanted to give us money for either film. Reservoir Dogs was made for $1.2 million, I think, least $1.2. Bad Lieutenant was made for $1 million, and no one wanted to give us the money. This petite woman packed a wallop. Ronna Wallace came along and got the money for us to do both these movies. I find that astonishing. No one ever mentions her name somehow. She didn't go on to a big career in film. Why, I don't know. But, well, I just mentioned her name, so I feel better.
And I mean, as I said, it's really one of the most important independent films of the 90s. And you have a tremendous support as an actor, more than anybody else, to independent films. I mean, what motivates this support and participation in independent projects?
Well, you know, I'm saying, giving some of this background because I came here to this event in the hopes of sharing stories with people. I feel that's the only way to really make change, is through us. Sorry, now I'm losing track of the question.
What motivates you, the support and participation in independent films? What?
Yeah. Well, you make a lot less money, so you wish you were supporting, in a way, major films. But the drive for me, has always been to try and do the best I can, to be the fullest I can. Because being full means awareness, and increasing awareness feels better than having less awareness. So my struggle has been to get a moment of truth, like I said earlier, with my colleagues in acting class. Stay up till the sun came up to find that moment of truth we could somehow put into the parts that we studied. That was always a mystery, you know, there's really a mystery to all this, that no technique will ever answer, only you will answer it. Applying the technique, you hopefully find an answer for yourself. So when I read these pieces that you're talking about, the Reservoir Dogs and the Bad Lieutenant, it touched something in me that I needed to know, I needed to get to, I needed to arrive at. So they were both journeys, you might say. That it's not a literal thing, it's something that's transcends what's literal. It's an urge, a desire to go there.
And this belief and support to independent films and young filmmakers resulted in one of the most extraordinary and beautiful films of the 90s, Piano.
Wait, I'm sorry, let's go back a second. I know what I was going to say now. Because when I did the Bad Lieutenant, I was doing a Broadway play, I think I said, and the actress in it told me, "Don't lower your price, Harvey." She said, she was a Hollywood actress. Great one, by the way. She did Marlon Brando's first film. But then I was a younger actor once, and she said, "Don't lower your price. because you'll never get it back up. Once you lower your price, you can't get it back up. I listened to her, but you know, she was from some other place I was not from. And I went ahead and did these films. And I'm glad I did, but she was right about the price.
And, I mean, looking at the roles you played at the time in Reservoir Dogs and Bad Lieutenant, I mean, the role of George Baines in The Piano is very different and contrary to characters. I mean, how did this part come to you?
Well, this is the story I like to tell. And Pierre Ricien, the French film critic and auteur on film, I know he said to Jane Campion, you should use Harvey Keitel for this part. So he introduced me to Jane, and oh gosh, why? What was the question again? Sorry.
I mean, because if we look back at the roles that you played in Reservoir Dogs and in Bad Lieutenant.
I got it. So, flash forward, we do The Piano, and this will answer your question. And we're doing the round table in Cannes, where I just came from. Alice Sorrentino's film. It's 20 some odd years since I was there with The Piano. Okay? So we're doing the round table interviews, and the last table we came to were very important. There was the New York Times and the Washington Post and the great newspapers in the States and all that. And one of the journalists says to me, how does it feel to play a romantic part for the first time in your career? I looked at him and I said, it's not the first time. He looked at his colleagues around the table, thinking maybe he made a mistake. And he said, no one, they were all confused. They said, he turned around to me, he said, what was that? I said, an acting class. So, how I came to it was that way. A long way around, but I arrived in Cannes then and now. It's a journey, you know, and how you arrive at it. Hard work and a lot of luck. Luck also.
Coincidence.
Coincidence, you know, you turn this way, you meet that girl. You turn the other way, you meet another girl.
Like life. So, very quick, if you have a few questions from the audience.
Hi, my name is Segidolu. First of all, it's been wonderful to have you here. Such a wonderful, auspicious moment. Just a simple question. I was always wondering, after all these characters you played, do you ever feel stuck with the sub-personalities and you carried into your personal life?
I'm sorry, do I feel stuck with?
Did you ever feel stuck with the sub-personalities you played and carried into your personal life? Or, like, you mentioned Stanislavski.
No, they come from my personal life. And in that sense, I'm stuck with myself. But you know, I'm going to make the best of everything.
Thank you.
Is you hear me? Okay. Very nice to meet you. You mentioned earlier about the darkness you talked about in the Marine, and how that led you to tap into your true capacity. So I just want to throw you a quick oxymoron about the quote that I read once in a while back, and it reads, "We are not afraid of unknown. What we are afraid of losing." We are not afraid of unknown. What we are afraid of is losing the known. So my question is to you is it's going to be a quick one.
What? Are you quoting me?
No.
Oh, no, it's God.
No, he's a wise man from Eastern studies. His name is actually Lao Tzu, but that's not necessary right now. My question is to you: Darkness, in your case, was your unknown entity, and facing yourself into that darkness is led you to. I guess what I want to know is can you expand on that darkness a little bit more, and how that led you to be the actor that you turned into?
I can. Night when you go to sleep, in the morning when you wake up, look in the mirror and ask that question. Well, you're reminding me. I mean, I used to look everywhere for that answer to that question. I would eat Chinese food just to open the fortune cookies. I'm sure they would tell me, but they didn't.
One final question. Maybe there's someone up there.
Thank you for coming to Turkey.
My pleasure.
We love you, and I actually met you in person back in New York.
I can't do it.
Microphone.
Hello. Sorry, we better wait, I guess. Welcome to Turkey. I love your films and your all the characters that you play. Of course, the Martin Scorsese. He was my instructor as well in NYU. I was the one that actually sang you guys the Turkish song at the time when I was auditioning, because I didn't know what to do. I was very high at the time, and when you guys just handled I said, just you got to read the part. I know that I wasn't going to do anything. I said, if I don't think in English, I can never play this part. So best thing is, it's the only language I know is the Turkish. So let me tell you something. I sing you guys a Turkish, and I sing just a little part, and you guys throw me out. But anyway, I become anyway. Did you work with Martin Scorsese? Did you ever sense that he was going to be a great director, the way he was directing?
Yeah.
Or he was kind of different? What was the sense that you felt at the time? Thank you.
There was that moment specifically. It was when we were making Who's That Knocking at My Door, while Marty was a student at NYU and I was selling shoes. And he asked me, we shot the movie only on weekends. It took like almost a year. Yeah, the whole winter, if I remember correctly. So he asked me if I wanted to come into NYU and see some of the scenes he put together. And I said, sure. So I came in, sat down in a room like this, but smaller. And, lights went out, screen came down, projection went on. It was the first 35mm film ever made by a student at that time. And the scene from Who's That Knocking at My Door came on from inside the church. Charlie goes to church, and came up on the screen, and there were these shots Marty took of that saint, other saint, all the architecture of the church and the symbols of hope and God and where we go to reach God, where we go to try to find the divine. All of a sudden, bam, theme song of the movie comes on. Who's that knocking on my door all night long? And the night before, bim, 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 bang, bang, bang. What the hell's that awful sound? And I said, my goodness, what the heck? How did he, do that? Put that song onto these religious symbols that we worship. that was the beginning of my saying, this guy is something else. You gotta remember, we were all in our 20s at that time. Early 20s. And I said, this guy is something special. That was the moment.
Thank you very much.
Well, one other moment I'll share with you. That was when Marty was teaching film at NYU. He invited me to come and watch a class. And he was the professor of the filmmaking class at that time. And what they were showing him that day was an assignment they had from Marty. And the assignment was to make a 1-minute film. How the hell can you make a 1-minute film? Well, this young student, this girl, gets up and puts her film on. And her 1-minute film was called The Fast Fuck. Good night.